Hi, Councillor Hepworth. We managed to join okay? Nope. I think I can't hear you. Wait a minute. Try talking again, Councillor Hepworth. I don't know if your microphone's working. Can you hear me, Councillor Hepworth? Can't hear you.
Hi, Ruth.
Hello, Helen. We're live streaming. I'm just going to email Councillor Swift.
Thank you. Can you see me?
I'm just on my email at the minute.
Okay.
I don't think you've got your camera on, Helen.
I have.
Let me see if I...
Right, start video again. It's just I noticed it's got a black box and not actually a video.
Yeah. Just let me see if...
Ruth, I'll come out and come back in again.
Okay, Helen, cheers. Hi, Pete.
Hello, how are you?
Hello. I'm fine. We're just trying to get everybody in and get it up and running smoothly. It seems to be working okay. I just Councillor Swift's here now.
There we are.
You're there, Helen. I can see you now.
Excellent. Hello.
And I think and Councillor Swift's here as well.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So I think we're doing okay.
I realised it's because I was still in the Teams meeting and it was
right.
using my video. Hello, Pete. I hope you're well too.
I am, thank you.
Good. Councillor Swift? Councillor Swift, we can't hear you, but you don't look like you're on mute.
No,
Oh, is that?
Oh, hello.
fine. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I can now, yes.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes.
Right. Right. I do apologise. I couldn't for the life of me find the link for the chair's briefing.
No problem. I rang
is
you
there
on your mobile. Do you want to chat quickly or are you okay?
Have you got anything to say to me?
Not other than just to talk, just to check with you how you want to run the session. But
we are live streaming at the moment,
fine.
so
No,
just be aware.
No,
we're
yeah,
on
understood.
YouTube.
That's fine.
Can you hear me now?
That's
you're
better, Councillor
a little bit
Hepworth.
muffled, Joe. Just a bit muffled, but we can hear. Right.
Okay.
Is there any particular complications to just taking the meeting as per agenda?
no, not to my knowledge.
Right. Now, in terms of outside attenders, you know, from the operators and so forth, do we know who's coming and who's not?
Councillor Swift, we've already got representatives here from Northern Rail, and we've also got Dwayne Wells here from Arriva.
Excellent.
And we've got Richard Isaac here from Northern as well.
Right. Okay, that's excellent.
We've only got one of the public reps here at the moment, David Hogg. If people could put the cameras on, that would be useful, please. Thank you.
Ruth?
Yes?
My laptop is playing up, so that's why you couldn't hear me before. So I've had to log on my phone, so I can't mute myself. So could you mute me?
Alia, can you mute Councillor Hepworth?
Yeah, I'll do that now.
Thank you. Councillor Hepworth, if you want to speak, will you put your hand up and then we can see? Thank you.
I think we're going to have sufficiently few people with us today that we can operate fairly informally. So if I miss your hand, Joe, just chip in. I don't think that will cause a difficulty. Not today. Right.
We've got another public representative just joining us, and it is 2 o'clock.
Exactly. Hi. Okay. Can you hear us, Cliff?
Yes, thank you.
That's grand. I think can everyone hear Cliff?
Yes.
Good, excellent. Right. Thinking particularly of yourself, Ruth, because you're the person that's got to make a note of it afterwards. Right. Is there anyone present other than on screen? I've got Ruth Chaplin from WYCA Governance, myself, Kevin Swift, I'm chairing the meeting. We're not sure at the moment whether Usman Ali, the vice chair, is actually going to join us today. Pete Myers from Northern Rail, Helen Ellerton. Are you doing the kind of professional lead, as it were, on behalf of WYCA Transport, Helen?
Yes, the officer lead. Yes.
Yeah. Councillor Joe Hepworth, Richard Isaac. Are you from Northern as well, Richard? You're muted.
Yes, I work under Pete.
Right. The afternoon, Laura. Is it Laura? Can you hear me, Laura? You're muted.
Sorry, Councillor Swift. Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. Alia Eunice doing the tech bits?
Yes, Ali is in the back room sorting people.
David Hogg from the everything Pontefract. But in particular the Pontefract rail users. Dominic Martin, are you from Arriva?
Dominic is a new governance services officer, Councillor Swift, so he's joining us to see how we operate the remote meetings, if that's okay.
Right.
Thanks, Councillor.
I would simply say, Dominic, that I don't think I've been to a single remote meeting yet that hasn't had some glitch. So don't judge it too harshly. And Mr. Wells, I think you are from Arriva, aren't you?
I am, yes. Hello,
okay.
Everyone.
And Mr. Baker, for the moment, is one of the 2 actual public representatives.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So do we have any official apologies, please, Ruth?
Yes, from John Terms, public representative.
Okay. Are there any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests? And that's just for me and Joe. I don't. I take it you don't either, Joe. Right.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think there's anything where we require exclusion of public or press.
No, we haven't.
Okay. Right. Now's the next one. We need somebody who can actually remember the meeting on the 17th of October. So somebody's got to move them as a correct record. So, and it's got to be either me or Joe or both. So I'm gonna say I'm sure they're absolutely right, correct? Are you okay with that, Joe? Right, they're officially approved.
Thank you.
Right. It's an awfully long time ago, but we haven't met since. So matters arising from those minutes. The only one I'm really picking out, I think, is the issues it's a couple of issues with Pete about Bag Hill Station, actually. On page two, Pete, you'll see at the end of the item about Bag Hill Station. Have you got a copy of the minutes?
Yes,
I have, yes. Yes, I have.
Right. On page 2 towards the bottom, it says resolved. And it's a couple of items. It was a couple of items for you to of a Northern Rail to chase up. Have those simply fallen by the wayside in the circumstances since then?
If I'm honest, they probably have, but
Right.
I will double check now while we're talking. But yes, they probably have. Come on, you silly computer. Yeah, I will need to report back on them to be doubly sure.
Okie
But
doke.
I will certainly do that.
Yeah. David? Mr. Hogg? David? Can you hear me? Okay. We'll come back. Are you there, David? We'll come back to David later on it. Okay. Is there anything else at all from those minutes, which is kind of almost exactly 12 months ago now? Right. That brings us to the minutes of the joint district consultative subcommittee, 17th of July. Now, that was also a virtual meeting, but it was the one that included everybody from all the different meetings. Now, we don't need to approve these. It's not for us to approve them or disapprove them. So it's simply if there are any matters at all arising from those minutes. Do you have anything at all, Helen? No. Does either of the public representatives wish to raise anything from those minutes?
No, a point that is not of importance, but I can't remember anything about the meeting, but I've certainly got some notes I made at it. But my name doesn't appear on the list of attendees. I'm not too worried about it, but I don't miss every meeting.
I'll make sure your name's added, Mr. Baker.
It's no great importance, but
we need it for accuracy. We'll add your name to the list of attendees. Thank you.
But I have no points to raise.
Anything else at all? Sorry, someone else was saying something. Anyone else got any other points to raise on those minutes? Okay. Hey, it's a point really from myself to Pete, I think, maybe to Ruth. On page 3, there's a list of bulleted points towards the top. It says Wakefield Westgate public conveniences. Was it actually about Wakefield Kergate? Because obviously,
I wasn't at this meeting, Councillor Swift, so I can't answer that.
I'll just flag a question mark against it because I'm not aware of any current issues at all affecting the Wakefield Westgate toilets. But there's some new public toilets kind of somewhere in the offing at Kergate. They might be under the auspices of Grand Central. I can't quite remember, but the location for those toilets was identified. But nothing's happened yet actually on the ground. So it just struck me it probably was a reference to Kergate rather than Westgate.
Yeah,
Kevin?
I think you're probably right. Yeah.
I remember.
Joe, sorry. Do you want to join in, Joe?
Yeah, I remembered it as Kergate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Welcome to Pete Daniels. Can you recall the other two, Mr. Pete Myers? Can you recall it? Is it a Grand Central sponsored project, the Kergate Station toilets?
It's a combination of both of us, to be honest. We are putting them on there, but the Grand Central scheme got a better set of facilities, so we were doing that. that stalled a bit over the summer, and I don't know where it is at the moment. But I mean, it was well on its way last time I was through. So it is a combination of both of us. And we'll hold our hand up to it, certainly.
Okay. Pete, the other Pete Daniels, we were on the item for the minutes of the Joint Consultative Subcommittee, the July minutes. Can you hear me okay, Pete?
Yes, I can hear you fine, Kevin. Sorry for that. I'm having problems. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound a bit distant, but I think we can all hear you.
Well, I'm out in Wakefield Rural, you see, that's why. What I want to say, Kevin, regarding the toilets at Wakefield Kirkgate Station. Now, there has been some development there, but nothing has happened for the last 12 months. Did you get that,
Yeah.
Kevin?
Just about. You're pretty faint.
What they did is they pulled it. There was a waiting room on platform 2 and 3, which has been demolished.
Yeah.
They put some scaffolding around, and it's been like that for the last 8 or 9 months. Nothing's happening because I was told by the proprietor of the cafe that the toilets were going to be on between platform 2 and 3 at Wakefield Kirkgate. As I said, at the moment, nothing's happened, Kevin.
Yeah. I mean that is a more general. The general issue is probably of rather more importance actually, because what you've got, I know the number of passengers is obviously lower, but we're getting towards winter, and there isn't any shelter. It's quite an exposed platform, and what you find is that people huddle under the top of the ramp that comes up from the underpass. But there isn't at the moment any fully enclosed or even 75% enclosed weatherproof shelter on the platform 2 and 3. And yeah, you are up on a viaduct at that point. Is that a network rail project?
No, Chair. It's a Grand Central project, and they're leading it through their offices, but they've been pretty much furloughed throughout the COVID crisis. So that's why it's stalled. However, it's our station, so it's our responsibility. I will chase them on this, and at the very least get something temporary up for as you say, for the winter.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay. Right. Before moving off those minutes, has anyone else got any points at all? Right. That takes us on to the chair's update. I think just some general observations about the current situation. I think possibly the aspect of things currently that's really uppermost to me is the concerns that I think pretty well everyone has over the coming next 6 months, and it's probably a bit more on the bus side than the rail side, but it's simply the fragility and uncertainty of the government funding. At the moment, the rail operators are on various different extensions, but the buses in theory are just on a six week rolling update. I know the government said that that'll probably continue until we know where we're going on the pandemic. But my suspicions are that quite some time before anybody really knows where we're going on the pandemic, I suspect Her Majesty's Treasury will start leaning on Department for Transport, particularly over the bus funding, but potentially over rail funding as well. I say those are observations. I'm well aware that the combined authority is inevitably extremely concerned about them, and certainly on the bus side of it, that given the sheer extent of public support at the moment for the buses, I know that the combined authority would very much like to see that funding channeled through the public authorities, so that there was a more direct line of accountability for that money, rather than simply the only line of accountability being, as it is at the moment, at national level between the Department for Transport and the bus operators at national level. Do you want to come in on that, Helen?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. Thank you. Just a small point. The two lots of CBSSG funding, as it's known from government, which is the Coronavirus Bus Services Support Grant. The commercial part of that, the bit that's directed straight to the operators, is on a 12-week rolling situation, basically, and ours is on an 8-week.
Right.
So we have, in addition to that, received additional funding for schools to help return to school for just, you know, school pupils returning to school and the additional capacity needed for that. But we are in constant conversations with DFT about, you know, timings and implications and how that all might work. I think the other thing is we are putting proposals together alongside the operators to work more closely with them, and therefore moves towards making more of the bus services act through an enhanced partnership, and that will help us to try and jointly manage and jointly work together more closely as the CBSSG funding tapers at some point or another in COVID recovery, whenever that might happen. But trying to work more closely together through that period will be of benefit to everybody.
Okay, welcome to Usman Ali. Any of the operators, or either of the operators, like to come in at all at this point? Okay, doke. We'll move on to the information report, which is one of the documents circulated. I hope everybody's had a chance to read through that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to add to it at all, Helen?
Not unless anybody's got any questions on any of the content in there. We've tried to make the information reports more district focused. They were quite West Yorkshire wide before, which is helpful. I still think we have a way to go though on specific district, more district schemes coming forward in the future, which we will try and work on over the next set of DCSE, if you know what I mean. So
I think the main thing I would actually add to that is the very welcome developments in respect of the Monkhill disability access. Really quite expensive. The Monkhill was one of these stations where it was an old-fashioned overbridge, you know, that were purely steps, and I think we were all perhaps a bit pleasantly surprised actually when it came out as a winner in one of the DFT, Department for Transport's annual bidding for that kind of project, because it might seem minor, i.e., you know, disability-friendly ability to cross the line instead of the steps, but the actual costs are somewhere, you know, somewhere topside of £3 million, which Wakefield Council are partially paying for. I think WYCA are partially paying for, and the biggest single lump I think is coming from Department for Transport. If somebody wants to shoot me down on those precise figures, I won't be at all surprised. But very, very welcome indeed, that particular episode. I think part of the difficulty is that we've got another 3 or 4 kind of extremely deserving cases just along that particular route. Okay, anybody any comments, queries, either on what's in that report or comments on what they think maybe should be in that report and isn't? Any comments of that kind?
Be helpful.
Yeah. Okay. David, are you in contact with us? You're not showing up as being either muted or unmuted, and I think I'm probably assuming from the fact that we've been talking about Pontefract and you haven't actually said anything at all, I'm assuming that despite the fact your name's up on screen, that we're not actually in two-way contact at the moment. If you can hear me and you want to come back later, either later in the meeting or after the meeting, by all means do so. Right. Then that brings us to operator updates. Who wants to go first? Pete, do you want to go first?
Happy to. It's been a funny old year, hasn't it? Right. We've just introduced our 6th timetable of the year, and gradually each one we see more and more services return. Clearly, initially when the crisis hit, we had a lot of people away self-isolating or on the vulnerable list. Gradually they've come back, and now the service is fuller and fuller. But clearly now, as we speak, we're riding the crest of the second wave, and we've still got a lot of people away from work, which makes our service provision delicate, but nonetheless it's deliverable, and we are actually returning very good performance figures throughout West Yorkshire, but equally to the 5 towns. We now measure something called time to 3 rather than the old public performance measure, PPM, we used to roll out before. Time to 3 are trains within 3 minutes of their scheduled time at all stations on the route, and it's about 90% across West Yorkshire currently, which is good. In the old PPM, that would have been about 92, 93%, so that is good. As you say, passenger numbers are nowhere near what they were, and it's easy to see what's happened. We are not seeing a peak in the traditional sense at all, and you know, there is no peak flowing into Wakefield, no peak flowing into Leeds or out of Leeds, and subsequently that is the lion's share of the fall we've seen, to about 30% of what we would have seen before this time last year. We did see in the summer a dramatic upsurge though in leisure travel, and this was very interesting, especially to the coast, but to the Dales and to retail in Meadowhall and in Leeds and anywhere else, the shops for that matter, and that was very noticeable. But as the schools went back, that dropped away a bit, and we are now back to this kind of 30 to 35%. It differs on different routes of what we normally would expect. What we did see in September with the schools going back, and I have to pay particular compliment here to West Yorkshire Combined Authority, because they helped us with this, and for us it was very important they did, because our timetable changed on the 14th, which was just a week after the schools went back. So for that first week we were delicate, to say the least, and they provided buses at key points, and some we had to use. But thankfully, our timetable now matches the schools perfectly, and we are seeing high numbers of young people travelling all over West Yorkshire to schools, and that carries on. So that is very good. Masks are compulsory on public transport, and in railway stations, compliance is better than it was, probably about 90%, but there's no real science behind that figure. certainly better in the day than it is on an evening, and you know, on a weekend as people come back from the pub and what have you. But generally, mask compliance is good, and it got a lot better and a lot easier once they became compulsory in retail, because people obviously are used to wearing them, and they do that. Local lockdowns across the region, and we work with local authorities to make sure our messaging meets their messaging, and it does, and we'll continue to do that. In this region, of course, Castleford Station is fast approaching fruition. That's a really good piece of work. The ticket office or the waiting room will be very popular and well received, and of course the work on the subway has started, and indeed on the car park. And you mentioned the Monkhill Access for All scheme. That is a terrific piece of work, and that was landed. It was a surprise to us as well, but you never know with these things who's going to win, but we did, and we were pleased about that. So apart from that, I don't think I've got anything further to add, but happy to take questions if anyone's got any.
Okay, just in passing, welcome to the meeting, Kim Purcell from Arriva. Can you hear us, Kim?
I can, so apologies, I'm late, thank you.
No, thank you, that's grand. Yes, any questions from public representatives to Northern?
Not from me.
Joe? No. I've got a point to make. It's been raised with me over occasional problems over the social distancing on the Barnsley trains. I think it tends to be particularly at peak hour. It tends perhaps to be particularly when there are significant numbers of school and college students, that those things tend to kind of overlap in terms of significance. But certainly the commuter type travellers say that they're sometimes having to shuffle about a bit as to which trains they use. They welcome the partial reintroduction of the second train every hour, and they tell me that sometimes they're nicely spaced, so it does give the passengers something closer to a half hour, but sometimes the actual proximity of the trains, they're very close together, so that it's not making much contribution in that direction. I don't have any other specific points to make about the trains other than the ones that Pete's covered. Shall we move on? We just started, Kim, on operator reports. Just before someone kind of does a report on behalf of Arriva, it's just to say that we're relatively informal today, so that if you did have any points that you wanted to make that relate to the earlier parts of the agenda, do feel free to make those points.
Thank you.
Who is reporting on behalf of Arriva?
I think Dwayne's going to pick this one up to start with. Happy to chip in as needed.
Yeah.
Hi everyone. Yeah, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Dwayne Wells. I'm head of commercial at Arriva Yorkshire, and we're joined today by Kim, who's our head of operations. We've had quite a busy few months, as you can imagine. Many successive timetable changes, but pleasing that we're now back at our pre-pandemic service levels. Patronage has recovered quite strongly to around about 55 to 60% of pre-pandemic levels. So obviously still some way to go, but we're pleased that it's got back to that level. We are still running obviously with reduced capacity for social distancing, and as such we've got a lot of extra journeys on the network to support the busiest flows. As Pete has said on the trains, the same is true of the buses. We've seen quite a drop off in peak time demand, and that's the traditional commute into the city centres and the town centres. It just isn't there. It's not the same. But demand is back to normal levels in some cases, particularly around school flows, of which we do cater for a lot across the Wakefield district, as you will know. A bit more from us then about school flows. We spent quite a bit of time before the start of term identifying where we thought that those capacity restrictions would result in unmet demand across the network. And we've worked in close partnership with our friends and colleagues at the Combined Authority, who have in turn secured funding from the Department for Education, and that's allowed us to run additional journeys across the network, providing the capacity where it's most needed. You'll also know that we run a network of school services which complement the main bus network, and through again close working with the Combined Authority, they've been able to arrange for other operators to provide additional capacity. So you will see, no doubt, some of our friends and colleagues from other bus operators behind us, ensuring that no student is left behind on those school journeys. So that's all very welcome too. So lots going on, and yeah, happy to take any questions.
Okay. Any questions at all to Dwayne? Any comments to Dwayne? Right. Okay, thank you very much indeed. I've got some queries stroke comments regarding the Wakefield City bus station. Now, it's not the biggest of bus stations internally, and in a way that pre-pandemic was actually quite good. Some of that space was taken up by the shops and stalls and so forth, where I'm very pleased to say quite a few of those seem to be trading extremely well. You know, why the market couldn't have been just as successful, but nonetheless. But what it has meant is that it squeezed the space up a bit now that we're trying to people keep the distance. The percentage of people wearing masks is at least as high as Pete's roughly estimated 90% on the trains. And certainly my own observations is that the level of people wearing masks actually on the buses is actually also quite high. However, bus stations being bus stations, there is a bit of a minority. I'm assuming they're passengers, possibly not all, but a number of people who fairly resolutely are not wearing the masks. And this is not scientific. This is just me in the bus station. There isn't any very obvious kind of evidence of security people having, you know, kind of speaking to people about it. It would also be helpful if now that the automatic doors are actually working, which is really good at this stage, just before winter, but whether there's any possibility of operating on an entrance and exit in and out basis at the end near the old Market Hall, because something which is certainly not a problem, which can be placed at your, sorry, I was coming close to an unintentional pun there, but something that can't be laid at your door is the fact that some of the characters that lurk around outside the bus station at that end, who are very, very definitely neither observing any degree of social distancing, and in most cases no masks either, so that there's a tendency for them to be blocking one or other of the doorways. It's not something that that Arriva can achieve 100% on, but it is something, particularly with older passengers, that they find themselves having to kind of squeeze past fairly closely people who are very definitely not, you know, not habitual mask wearers. So, sorry, bit of finally still on Wakefield bus station, and again not an easy one, but for the busier journeys and where there are still longer queues, is there any way in which those queues can be, shall I say, bent round a bit, so that they're not obstructing the general free movement through the actual bus station? No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm longer on questions and requests than I am on suggested solutions.
No problem. I'll pick this up. So yeah, Wakefield bus station, as you say, has its challenges, and that's certainly fair to say. We do have the 3 doors, and we have looked at whether we could implement one-way systems within there. What we actually came to the conclusion was that by putting one-way systems in, we might actually be encouraging footfall in areas where we don't necessarily need it. So actually condensing people more, which is quite then difficult to manage. The more we restrict the directions, the more enclosed we have to make those spaces, which is why we took the decision not to do that. We do have bus station managers who walk around and do ask people to put their face coverings on. So it's a shame that you haven't seen those. I'm not sure if you're aware, but transport workers are actually, by definition of the legislation, they are exempt from wearing face coverings. However, we've taken the position that regardless of that, we expect all of our staff to wear face coverings, and that includes the cleaners and the market stall holders, etc. And the reason for that is because along with the combined authority, we recognise that actually trying to tell passengers within the station to wear a face covering if our own staff aren't wearing them is quite a difficult message to put across. So we've also been doing regular announcements about the face coverings, and as I say, walking along the concourse and trying to encourage the wearing of that. We've got an excellent CCTV system in Wakefield bus station, which means that on a regular basis, I'm actually able to dip in from home and see what's going on and monitor compliance, and then speak with the team directly within the station. The doors, as you say, are a challenge, and actually all 3, I would say, are a challenge. The market stall entrance, yes, gets undesirable people. The middle entrance tends to get college students congregate, and some youths tend to prefer that area. And the Marshway entrance, our staff particularly like to congregate. So we do have challenges at all 3 entrances that we try to deal with. The other part of that challenge is that our boundary stops physically at the doors. So we try to work very closely with the council to put joint efforts in to address those types of issues and make sure that we're working together in partnership on that.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else got any points in relation to any operators, including?
Oh, sorry, I didn't address.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. Sorry.
No, sorry, I've just realised I didn't address your point about the queuing system. So earlier on during COVID, we actually allocated 3 stands purely for drop-off. So the bus would pull into a stand, drop off its passengers, and then pull onto the departure stand in order to load the passengers, and that reduced the cross flow of people on the stand. Unfortunately, when we've gone back to near normal service levels, we just don't have the capacity to be able to maintain that within the station. And again, we did look at queuing systems, and we've been working closely with the combined authority who manage the other bus stations in the region. And again, just going back to what I was saying earlier about controlling the flows, by putting those restrictions in, we felt we might actually make it worse than better. So that's why we haven't progressed with that option. But we're definitely open to suggestions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm afraid I've got a final one for you. It was one that came up at one of the WYCA internal workshops. And it was over the issue of building and maintaining public confidence in terms of this, the safety of public transport. And it was whether it was feasible to have some visible cleaning activities at the bus station, so that if people were actually at the bus stations able to see somebody pop onto one of the buses while it was doing its turnaround, and giving the more heavily used rails and so forth a quick wipe over, because certainly you get quite a lot of the rails and uprights within a bus that are, virtually everybody that's using the bus is actually is touching them, holding them, running their hand along them. So it was partially an actual issue of sanitising, and it was partly an issue of more something that was visible, you know, in terms of the public confidence issue.
Yep.
Anybody?
So we do,
sorry.
We do have a full-time cleaner in Wakefield bus station for that purpose. So she jumps on and off the buses and walks around the bus station just doing touch point cleaning. So she does that on a regular basis. We've also put one into Castleford bus station, and that cleaner jumps on and off Arriva buses and does the touch point cleaning. We've done similar in other areas outside the Wakefield district. So we've got one in Dewsbury, we've got one in Selby, and yeah, that's all of ours. So we have put additional cleaners in for that very reason.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Any comments, queries to operators? Right, can I
ask a question?
Of course.
One of the things I want to ask is I know it's been a while now since the meetings have happened. And one of the questions I want to ask the operators is when we spoke to Northern Rail, are Northern Rail here?
Indeed they are.
I remember when we suggested a few times that Northern Rail would put on a route from Wakefield direct to Bradford. How far have they got with that? I just want to ask.
I mean, it's still in the pipeline to be done, but the truth of the matter is we can't get the path through Leeds Station with the work that's going on with the Platform Zero work at Leeds has made that impossible, because the train would need to come into Leeds from Bradford, then reverse and come back out again. And currently there just isn't space. So that's scheduled for completion in 2021. It'll be sometime after that, I think, we will see those services start to run. Where they'll end up, there was talk about Lincoln, there was talk about Nottingham, but the kind of cross Leeds, although it's not cross Leeds because it's in one side and out the same side,
yeah,
Leeds transfer is currently precluded because of that.
Okay, I also want to question, I remember me and Peter have mentioned a few times the possibility of Northern put, I don't know, obviously groundwork on the platform, don't they, up at the Wakefield Caregate station, if there were any toilets going to be there or not at the Wakefield Caregate station.
Osman, no doubt you will get a quick answer on this, but can I say that we did actually deal with that particular topic quite fully earlier in the actual meeting, but I'll pass back to Pete to give you a quick answer.
Yes, okay. They are happening. It's part of the Grand Central work on the shelter and the structure there. I wish I could give you a time, but I can't. I will dig into it once we've left this meeting. I'll come back to Helen and Ruth to tell you where we are with it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other points? Okay. Can I say thank you very much indeed to all the operator representatives for giving their time, and indeed, you know, for the responses that have been given. Right, that moves us on to item 10. Is this your item, Helen?
Yeah. So this
carbon
is
reduction pathways.
Item. Yes. So I think we just is it going to do it? Can you see my screen?
No, we can't, or at least I can't. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has that gone into share? Excellent.
Excellent. Thank you.
That's step one.
Well done, Helen.
So right, I just need to right. My trouble is my notes are I'll hide them now. That's what I want. Okay, brilliant. Okay, thank you. So the main consultation item that we wanted to bring today was about the carbon emissions reduction pathways work, which has been going on in the Combined Authority for a little while, and we're trying to now kind of bring it to you for some initial thoughts to then go out to public consultation next February, hopefully, subject to approval from the Combined Authority. So what have we been doing? So the purpose of the carbon emissions reductions pathway study has been done by the Combined Authority along with its partner councils, due to the fact and started around the time that we declared a climate emergency in July 2019. So the Combined Authority took this opportunity to essentially strengthen its emissions reduction ambition at the same time. So we are now aiming to be a net zero carbon by 2038 and to have made significant progress by 2030. The carbon emission reduction pathway study, also known as CERP, which is a bit less of a mouthful, was commissioned to enable essentially an understanding to be formed of kind of what, why, when and how West Yorkshire could reach this ambition. It importantly doesn't go as far as answering where different measures, policies or actions should be implemented. And this is kind of being considered as one of the key areas in which the zero emission infrastructure framework set out as part of our West Yorkshire devolution deal will address. But it's more the kind of the background to all of that we're trying to been trying to work through. So the study was essentially broken down into 3 tasks. Task 1, which was the development of the 3 pathways that demonstrate the different ways in which we could meet a net zero carbon by 2038. Second task is the development of an implementation roadmap with time scales of when deployment of measures identified in the pathways could occur. And then a third and final task, which is for kind of focus group centred on the development of policies and actions which will enable the measures identified in the pathways to be implemented. So essentially helps us answer the what question. The idea is that we will develop the second and third tasks over these coming months with a final report for West Yorkshire for the Combined Authority nearer to Christmas. And hopefully then, as I say, in February to go out to public consultation. Okay. So essentially, there are a number of kind of key messages that came out of task 1. So making sure that we've got clear what the structure of that response to the carbon to the climate being net zero by 2038 could look like. And essentially we could do this in 2 ways. Firstly, to deliver fully the measures that have been identified in the study and identified through this work, we would achieve estimated reductions of around 73 to 82%. So we'd go a significantly long way, but obviously you'd recognise not fully there. And the remaining emissions would be delivered through a combination of increasing our ambition on certain measures, such as tree planting and the like, or supporting the deployment of innovative technologies, for example, such as direct air capture. So various things to come together to actually try and achieve a net zero emissions. And then a range of common kind of deployment levels across all 3 of the pathways that have been modelled, which allow West Yorkshire to start on a pathway towards net zero. And so this is about kind of trying to understand what our baseline is and then delivering a number of initiatives to try and bring that forward. We should say that to fully achieve our ambition, we'll need government to intervene basically and provide financial and policy support. So there are a number of wider mechanisms that we need to change to enable us to fully deliver on this ambition. For example, decarbonisation of heat and a national policy on aviation, for example, are 2 key ones in there. But regardless though, we're looking to demonstrate highly ambitious kind of leadership and policy to both a local and a regional level we're trying to achieve. Okay, so this slide is sort of setting out where we are in terms of the different things, the different contributors, if you like, to our current output of carbon. And in particular, drawing your attention to transport on here, obviously, and transport, along with buildings, are obviously the highest emitters. Transport being dominated by road transport, cars, vans, HGVs, all make up significantly the largest share of our carbon output. Outside of that, aviation is the largest contributor of the rest of the other transport bit at the top of the so this bit up here, aviation is the significant other in there. Building emissions are roughly split 2/3 domestic and 1/3 non-domestic. So you can also see how that, in terms of the energy we use in our homes and businesses, is also a significant contributor to our output. And obviously the industry emissions reflect kind of the lack of heavy industrial facilities in West Yorkshire, and so it's kind of showing that actually industry actually has quite a low output, but that's generally just because of the types of industries that we have in West Yorkshire. So essentially there have been 4 pathways have been modelled through this work. The first one, the baseline pathway. The purpose of this was to illustrate the likely emissions outcomes with current policies. So what are we doing now, and what will that continue to generate, for example, in terms of emissions? And this illustrates how more ambition is required to meet the regional ambition, and therefore showing that whatever we do over and above what we currently do could generate more better outcomes. The maximum ambition, so the other end of the scale, was to illustrate how quickly the region could technically reduce its emissions. So the key to decarbonisation is the significant electrification of heat, transport and industry, supported by enabling technologies such as demand side response and energy storage. So for us to reduce our emissions as quick as possible, hitting hard those big generators of energy are the key way for us to reduce the impact as quick as possible. The third pathway that was considered was a high hydrogen pathway, and this was to illustrate how large-scale hydrogen and carbon capture and storage can lead to decarbonisation. It involves kind of the repurposing of the gas network, enabling hydrogen to be used for heat, industry, power and transport. And I think it's fair to say that there are other regions in the country that have more hydrogen available than we do to use readily, but it is something that we need to investigate more. And then kind of the fourth pathway was best to describe a balanced response to decarbonisation. So how a balanced mix of technologies can lead to decarbonisation of the region, utilising a mix of technology, so hydrogen, electrification, bioenergy and decentralised energy production. Okay. So where do each of the pathways get us to, essentially? So what kind of reduction in carbon and the time for that do each of those get to? And you can see that the maximum ambition obviously brings it down quicker and to the lowest point. But the one that's interesting, the two that are interesting, is a high hydrogen or a balanced one, kind of take the same pathway and reduce to more or less the same level by the same time. And you can also see on there that the baseline, so the one that takes root in terms of if we do nothing extra than what we're currently doing, maybe suggest we will get some reduction, significant amount of reduction, but not enough compared to doing something else, and does not bring us nearer to a net zero target. So, and what does this mean for transport? So basically, this shows that in both 2030 and 2038, there are significant emissions remaining across all transport sectors. To reach a net zero in West Yorkshire by 2038, these would need to be offset by negative emissions in other sectors or more speculative technologies. And that's really the key. So the more we can reduce carbon in transport, the greater the overall outcome, regardless of what other industries do. So cars, vans and heavy goods vehicles still contribute a high share of these emissions, as you'll see on that graph. But with widespread decarbonisation of road transport, therefore needing to happen. It should show, you can see on there that the balanced and the high hydrogen pathways achieve almost the same emission reduction trajectory, primarily due to employing the same behaviour change trajectories and sort of being able to therefore close the gap in emissions differences between hydrogen fuel cell and battery electric. And that really shows that regardless of the choice of technology there, you're likely to go on the same sort of pathway trajectory. And then these are really, the next few slides are really a set of kind of different, so well, they're all images, but different kind of thoughts provoking in terms of how we can potentially change and influence our kind of behaviours, and different, so a mix of, essentially what we're saying here is a mix of behaviours are required, change of behaviours and technological development and applications are required to try and achieve this. And this is where we would like some of the discussion. So essentially what we're saying here is 12 to 15% reduction in passenger demand for travel can be achieved through home working. And obviously, bear in mind, some of this thinking was done before COVID. Now we're obviously, at this moment in time anyway, majority is home working in some sectors. So that change and that change in mindset has to an extent probably been made. It depends on what happens when we reduce social distancing, basically. And therefore it would be interesting, I guess, to see kind of the impact of that on what that's done with carbon output, for example. And then the role of active travel. So different ways of promoting and bringing active travel, and kind of implemented in sort of a regional approach. So cycling and walking are key to all of this, obviously, and basically promoting and utilising active travel as a way to change mindset. So encouraging active travel on shorter journeys, and really change how people think about just popping to the shops, for example. And then public transport and public transport technology and how we convert our current fleets in public transport and really make the business case for using alternative fuels, and how we try and influence government to try and encourage operators to take up alternative fuels is really important. So basically what we're trying to say here is really getting that mix of technology going forward will hopefully try and bring our emissions down into future public transport fleets. And then coming back to the private car, obviously we're saying here that the private car is currently one of the main contributor to road transport, and in turn the carbon emissions from that. So it's around how do we encourage a different fuel mix in the private car, and how do we make them come to the mass market? Sorry. And that's quite important in terms of the way we power the vehicles that we travel in, and how we'll need to change, and how we actually make them more accessible, and bring them in line so that people can afford to pay them. Partly. Okay.
Right.
I'm just gonna.
Thank you very much indeed.
That's no problem. I can't currently see you, so I just need to bring that back.
Yeah. Yeah. Before you move on, Helen, before you move on to what you'd like us to do now, I noticed that Richard had his hand up, and can we say thank you very much to Kim? She says she'll be back with us after a short break. Thank you. Richard, I know you indicated to speak some little time ago.
No, I think it's key that we bring youth groups along with the low emission strategies we've got for the region, and certainly that's something we're doing at Northern, working with the National Citizen Service to bring young people closer to the railway. Young people get it; they realise the environmental challenges we have today, and they are the solutions of tomorrow. So they've got a good role to play in this, particularly in the forward thinking. We're doing a project with Calderdale College, starting tomorrow actually, around the network and what that means to young people in that region. Hoping to do something similar with Wakefield District. Unfortunately, this year, due to COVID, we couldn't get the National Citizen Service project off the ground in the Wakefield District because of the travel element that we couldn't do. Therefore, they couldn't do the social action element. So NCS pulled that right at the beginning of the pandemic. But it's something we will work with youth groups on Wakefield District around bringing them to, a low carbon form of transport, such as the railway.
Okay. Helen, before I open it up, did you have a kind of any particular questions that you were hoping that we would address ourselves to?
Not specifically, but I think it would be really useful to kind of have a bit of a discussion around the group's kind of thoughts on whether they think anything in there is achievable, not achievable, kind of how do you feel about sort of where we see road transport in relation to the whole carbon picture, or are there things that you think we should be focusing more on or less on, really?
Okay, right. I'll simply throw that one open. Who'd like to pitch in? Okay. That's open to everyone, operators as well as members of the public. Okay, nobody at all?
One point, in a sense in passing, but I think it might have something to do with the timing, and I realise this is likely to be consultation next year, but the recent announcement by Leeds City Council of effectively abandoning its imminent plans for greater control of emissions being the planned outcome, could be said not to send the right sort of signals. People are working from home, as has been referred to, in increasing numbers, not because of climate change, but because of the pandemic. The reduction in carbon emissions, which the public perception of Leeds' action is, it's all going well. We've no need to bother. We've no need to worry too much about climate change. Seems to me to be, in that sense, sending potentially the wrong message. Yes, there are more positive things, increasing purchase of electric vehicles, etc. But I think the easy headline is we've cracked it, and now that's not the message that we're seeking to get across or to research, but it does strike me as possibly misleading and contributing to the public not taking the issue as seriously as the otherwise would in the medium term.
I would agree with you, and I think they took the decision to cancel their clean air zone because the levels had reduced so much and funding was becoming a bit of a challenge. But I would agree with you. It is to do that in the current circumstances does seem a little bit odd, and it's not necessary necessarily, you know, the direction of what will happen when social distancing changes. And Bradford aren't quite at that similar stage, but they have been pressing on with theirs, and obviously they're not, theirs wasn't due to come into line this year or anything. So, but it will remain to be seen what happens when social distancing does change, and the effort therefore to get back into Leeds and Bradford down the line returns. On the plus side, out of all of that though, we have made a real effort to improve some of the carbon emissions from some of the bus fleets we've been doing that are running into Leeds from, I appreciate it's not directly in Wakefield, but quite a few of the buses that run into Leeds are running from Wakefield, particularly on the Arriva corridors of the 110. So we are, as a result of the clean air zones, we have had a real push on getting the emissions better of the buses in the region.
Okay. Yeah.
Councillor Swift, you're on mute.
Thanks, Ellen. Yeah, Richard, your hand symbol is still up. Is that just a hangover from when you spoke a few minutes ago?
It is. It's me trying to find how I can turn it off.
Okay, right. They somewhere around there's some words. If you go down to the left hand side of that box, there should be something that says how to lower hand. Not to worry. Right. I think I'd got a bit of a query to the operators. I'll bring Pete in a moment. I'd got a query to the operators, which was that the whole business of working from home, which nobody knows what the future scale of it will be, but I think everybody's agreed that after the pandemic, it will be almost certainly higher than it would otherwise have been. But has that been disproportionately a diversion away from public transport? In other words, is it the people who are already on the lower carbon options who are moving towards working from home, leaving, say, private car transport disproportionately less impacted? Or is that just that kind of question simply too soon to ask?
I think an element of it is you're right. It is
Yes.
probably too soon to tell. I suppose sharing a little bit of insight. So our X41 service between Wakefield and Leeds, we are only seeing patronage at around about a 15-20% level as to where it was normally at. So that just evidences, given that that's obviously quite a commuter route, the level that those services have got to. As to whether that commute will come back, it's anyone's guess, isn't it? But yes, I think we're agreeing with you there that there is likely to be a change of with more people working from home, and we just have to remain flexible in how we adapt the network to respond to that.
No, I would agree. One of my bellwethers, two I use. One of them is the new car park at Garforth, which is probably less than a quarter of its normal capacity, and that has increased, but not massively. They're people who park and ride normally, often from outside of West Yorkshire. So that's clearly gone away. Occasionally, I do need to drive into Leeds. I might be doing something later on, and that is certainly considerably easier since COVID. So I do believe that while people working from home were probably people who often did use a train, because we see them missing. But equally, I think a lot of those were people who drove as well. One thing I didn't mention, and it was on my list, one thing we're introducing or have introduced this summer is the flexible season ticket. And this is a product designed specifically for a post-COVID world where people do work from home. And it's basically a carnet of tickets you buy on your mobile phone, or in West Yorkshire as the smart card. And you can take a season ticket discount without having to go into Leeds or Wakefield or wherever every day, every day in a week. So that's a product where we have introduced in the summer for that reason.
Okay. Okay. Pete, you wanted to come in. Pete Daniels.
Yes, can you hear me, folks? What I want to raise is regarding this situation is, do we have any joined up ideas with the planning people? Now, I live on Denbydale, I've just off Denbydale Road, which is the main link from to the motorway if you're going south. And the intentions are is to change the road from 2 lanes to 3 lanes, and go around the roundabouts as if you're going to go towards Denbydale, and it becomes a 1 lane, which means the amount of stationary traffic on Denbydale Road is going to double to what it already is at the moment. So when you think about all these things, people need to talk to one another. And unfortunately, the planning department and the highways and you lot don't. Thank you.
Okay. Pete?
Yes?
If you send your comments directly to Neville Ford.
A minute, all right.
Yeah.
Neville Ford, yeah.
And just CC Joe and myself in. They give me a ring afterwards if you've any problems with the actual emails, but Wakefield Council email addresses are a standard format. 70% of them is kind of initial plus surname, no dot, and about 20-30% are kind of the full first name, and then the surname. So most of the time you can, if you know somebody's name, you can sort out their email, you know, without too much bother. Yeah, no, do feed that through, because I think what is tending to happen is that because the planning system is a bit like the kind of Queen Elizabeth or an oil tanker, sorry, no pun. It takes a long, you know, we're working on plans that are probably 15 to 20 years old now, and the process takes a very long time to change. So that even though there's a bit of retrofitting kind of friendly language towards climate change, it's fairly unavoidable that the actual decisions taking place on the ground, they do actually tend to reflect a slightly earlier epoch. But yeah, feed those comments in.
A lot of people probably won't be aware, but I'm the chairman of the Distant Parish Council. So I am involved with it that way. So what I would suggest is that they do is, when we have our next meeting, when it's raised, Kevin, I'll get our clerk to email it to you. Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah, fine. Cliff, had you got anything further to add?
No. Thank you.
Okay. Any further operator comments? I mean, for example, as to the practicability of the assumptions, nobody at WYCA is going to take it personal. It mostly comes from consultants, but they. I mean, the whole pathways exercise is the thing that's at the absolute centre of it is the various assumptions that are being made. You know, that if we do this, that will get us to such a point by such a date. Yes. And so if we simply carry on doing this, for instance, gradually, just for sake of argument, you know, converting buses to battery, say, that kind of thing will bring us to such a point at whatever date in the future. But if you want to start off with saying this is where we must be by such a date, then the exercise we're talking about is absolutely very, very good at then being able to work back from there and saying, if that's where we want to be by such a date, then this, that, and the other has to be done. And so if we haven't started, for sake of argument, completely phasing out a certain type of vehicle by a certain date, then at whatever date in the 2030s, you know, we're not going to hit that. So it's the assumptions, the practicability of those, the implication of certain assumptions that they're absolutely central to this this exercise that WYCA is doing. Right. If that's it on that topic, do you have anything further to add, Helen, or any further queries you'd like from people?
No, I think that was a useful comment. But if, as I say, if you do have any follow-up things you'd like us to think about or consider, then please please do get in touch.
Yep. Is it possible to circulate that presentation?
Of course. Yeah.
Right. I think you've got everybody's
well,
email
I'm
addresses,
assuming
haven't
so.
you?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
assuming we can do. It's yeah, obviously because it's pre-public consultation. But
right.
Ruth might be able to advise whether we can fully circulate it.
Well, it's just okay.
Well, we can, because you've done it live on YouTube.
Yeah.
So it's been out in the public domain. So
exactly.
I would say yes, we can.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay.
Okay. The agenda doesn't say AOB, but is there any? Okay. Well, can I say thank you very much to everyone? Thank you for everyone who's given the time, and thank you for everyone who's put time and effort into the pre-meeting preparation. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you.
And good afternoon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.